I'm sure Clifford will be right back. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. First of all, let me read the emergency evacuation procedures. In the event of an emergency evacuation, an alarm will sound. Everyone should exit the building by way of the nearest stairwell in a safe and effective manner. If the nearest stairwell is blocked by smoke, use the other stairwell. Do not use the elevator. Once you have reached the main floor, follow the exit signs to exit the building and quickly proceed away from the building. Please be mindful of others evacuating and of emergency vehicles. Before we jump into business tonight, probably the majority of you saw in the newspaper George Williams, who is the brother of Geneva, that sits on the board with us, died on Tuesday. And George was a tremendous asset to Alcoa and Blount County in general. And just like to extend my best thoughts to the Williams family as they mourn the loss of George, and as the county mourns his loss as well. And in recognition of George, I'd like to just take a few moments of silence. With that done, you have the minutes from your packets. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? We have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Geneva, we just we missed you, and we recognized and acknowledge the death of your brother, and sorry. And public hearings, Roger.
There are two rezoning requests before you. The first one is at 3416 Garner Road. Stretch my arms out here. The property owner is requesting that the property at 3416 Garner Circle be rezoned from R1 to Rural District 1 to C Commercial. The property is located at the corner of Montville Road, Garner Circle, and just north of the intersection with Ralston Road, and is identified on tax map 92 and part of parcel 16.03. The remainder of the parcel is on the opposite side of Garner Circle. This request is only for the portion of the property that is bordered by Montvale Road, Garner Circle, Ralston Road, and Zenith Drive that goes along the back of the property. And I hatched the property on the maps that I provided. This property is zoned R1 and is located within the growth boundary for the city of Maryville. Montvale Road is listed as a major collector on the road plan for city of Maryville. And the description of the commercial zone, it establishes the purpose of the zone and calls for it to be consistent with the zoning resolution, public chapter 1101, and other plans adopted by Blount County. Being located on a major collector road and within the urban growth boundary of Maryville would indicate that this request meets that purpose. I've included several maps for your review. The first map was a simple copy of the tax map for that area that I got from the property assessor's webpage. The second is an aerial view from our GIS program. Third is the GIS zoning map for that area. And I zoomed out to indicate the proximity of this rezoning related to a rezoning that was approved in 2008. The fourth map indicates the urban growth boundary that I mentioned above. And I also included a copy of the official zoning map that shows this parcel being hatched. I wanted to give you all those maps just so there wasn't any confusion about where the property was located and which one we're talking about.
Thank you, Roger. Questions, comments? Commissioner French?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Roger, I've got several questions. It seems like in the past, since this is in Maryville's growth boundary, has Maryville ruled on that, or do they need to rule on that before we do?
They would have.
Has it been requested, a request been sent to Maryville?
Not yet. That would happen before you would see it at the commission level.
Well, that's my understanding. It would have to go there. Do we not need to proceed in the same way and wait and see what Maryville does before we do anything, or?
Well, no, it would, since it's in an urban growth boundary, the rezoning would go to the city of Maryville before it came.
That's my understanding. I thought it would go to them first and then come to us. I know it does before the commission can rule on it.
Correct.
But I'm thinking, would it not follow the same procedure before we do take a vote on it?
I can kind of answer that. There's no set procedure. The county commission in the past has always waited on recommendations from the planning commission of the county and the planning commission of Maryville or Alcoa if it's in their planning region. In the past, it usually comes to us first and then goes to Maryville. Basically, it can be done simultaneously, but there's no set procedure on that. Just traditionally, it's gone to us first.
Is this a vacant lot, Roger? From the map, I couldn't tell if there was a structure on it or.
There's a small structure on it that I think has been different uses in the past, and I'm not sure what those were. It may have been a barber or something in it at one time. It's a small, non-residential structure that's been there for some time.
If I could interrupt, this is actually a public hearing. I think it would be good if we put it towards the public first and then have the planning commission discuss it as part of action.
Thank you, John, for bringing that to my attention. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to the issue of the rezoning from Rural District 1 to commercial at 3416 Garner Road? Come to the mic and state your name.
I'm Ingrid Hahn. I live in Louisville. There's just one thing I wanted to address, which is some of you who have been out to Louisville's roundabout and seen the Dollar General there, you've probably noticed that Louisville imposed design guidelines on Dollar General as a condition for building. And so the building is bricked as opposed to some of the ones you see which are just aluminum. The signage, the sign out to the front of the building is what they call, I think, a pedestal sign. Is that what it's called? It's like a low visual, more attractive sign. These kind of things can be made a part of your approval of the request. And I believe on your agenda tonight, you've got consideration of design guidelines for development out in the county. So I would just like to propose that if you're considering development of this sort, that we aim towards more attractive, because you can look around, there's a Dollar General on Topside Road that doesn't look nearly as nice. And that's just what I would like to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to the issue? If not, public hearing is closed. Roger, John, can you speak to the comments that were made? I don't disagree with the comments But we can only act on this with current standards, it would be my understanding.
We do have, I think, did you include the design criteria? We do have design criteria of our own that we use, that are in effect currently. Of course, this is just the rezoning. It is not a site plan review, so I don't know if they're relevant at this point.
Okay. Commissioner McClellan?
Since it's in Maryville's growth boundary, do we see the site plan, or does that go to them?
No, the site plan would come before us.
Before this go-
Any other, Commissioner French?
We're not taking any action on this tonight. It's just a public hearing. Am I correct?
We cannot act on zoning requests other than to approve the zoning request from our standpoint and then send it on. The county commission and both the county commission and the city of Maryville would have to act on it, and there will be a public hearing before there's a final vote of the county commission.
You'll be recommending.
This body sends a recommendation up to the county commission, either for or against.
I do have several more questions then.
Go ahead.
If we're going to act. The surrounding, is this the only spot in this area that is a commercial, would be commercially zoned? I mean, the areas around this, are there any commercial lots surrounding this down the road? I noticed you've got
Just the one that is indicated on that map that
that's only, the rest, everything else around it is residential?
yeah, the
Okay.
red property's there at the corner of Ridge Road and Montvale Road.
And I understand, according to the request, that they're looking to put a Dollar General store on the site. Do you know what time frame we're talking about?
I don't. They've not made that official submittal
Is there
for
someone
Dollar
here
General.
that could answer the question?
I don't see anyone.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I've got I guess a comment just to respond. I think it's our responsibility that we are looking at the use of the property. It's not necessarily what the particular use, correct? So it's either
Correct.
commercial or no, and whatever falls into the commercial use. So I'm familiar with I live near there, and it's a commercial structure. It's not a residential structure. It does have a, quote, asphalt parking lot. It's been used as a commercial use before as a barber shop most recently, and I personally think it's within the confines of what we're looking for.
Commissioner French?
Thank you, Tom. Which brings up another question. How is it being assessed now, Roger? If it was commercial before, how's it being assessed?
Let me see if I've got. I don't have the tax card, but I would only imagine that it was assessed commercial because that's not a residential structure that's on it.
Okay.
But I don't have the tax card in my file.
So you're pretty certain it's being assessed as a
If I had to guess, I would guess it was. Because the rest of the property is where is the office building for a commercial business that's been there for a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? And a motion to recommend or recommend against rezoning of the property is in order. Do I have a motion?
Motion to recommend.
We have a motion to recommend for the rezoning and a second. Are there any further questions or comments? Not. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. We have one nay. Motion carries. sorry. Roger.
There's a second. This one is the property owner's requesting the property at 4252 East Lamar Alexander Parkway be rezoned from Rural District 1 to Rural Arterial Commercial. The property is identified on tax map 60, parcel 37. This property is in the R1 zone and is located outside of the urban growth boundary for the city of Maryville. In the description of the RAC zone, it establishes the purpose for the zone to be located in the R1 zone outside the urban growth boundary, and that the property is located on a major 4-lane arterial road. This property is located with direct frontage on the section of East Lamar Alexander Parkway that lies outside the urban growth boundary and runs to the intersection with Foothills Parkway. This property of this proposed rezoning is located within the described area that may be considered for RAC zone. And then I included the same set of maps for this one as I did the other.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak to the rezoning request at 4252 East Lamar Alexander Parkway? Please state your name.
Hello, my name is John Lowell. Roger, Commission, I mainly wanted to just thank you for entertaining the rezoning of the property. I am a realtor with Caldwell Banker Commercial Wallace & Wallace, and I'm representing the property owners, which are Tommy Wilson and Joe Wilson, that lived out there a long time in that area, in the Walland area. And our main purpose of, we have no particular use in mind for the property. It's been in the family for a lot of years. There is a residential dwelling there, but it's very run down. And they are looking for the best economic use of the property. Because it's right on the highway, it was our thought that the highest and best use of it would be to consider the commercial zoning. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no one else to speak from the audience, public hearing is closed. Floor is open for questions and comments from the commission members. Commissioner French.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You've answered a few of my questions. For what purpose? I assume this piece of property is vacant right now?
It's not, I think there's a tenant in the residence.
Oh, there is a residence on the piece of property, okay.
Yes.
Roger, I guess it's being assessed as a residential now?
That is correct.
Okay, that's all I need to know. Thank you. Oh, one other question. The red shaded area on the map, does that show other commercial development there? Or
Yes,
I
those
assume-
are
okay.
the ones that have been
Okay.
rezoned already.
All right, thank you.
Roger, that parcel, I guess it's 4252, looking at the color map, is what's labeled on there.
Yes.
That's immediately adjacent to the new power substation that's going in. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe that is the property that they put that on.
Okay. Commissioner McClellan?
Roger, the driveway for 4318 appears to be coming in front of this property. Is 4318 commercial or is it residential?
It's residential.
Other questions or comments?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is it, wait a minute, it's my understanding that if we rezone this, is it going to be put up for sale then as a commercial use property?
Yes, it is going to be listed for sale. Again, we have no particular use for or exactly what the use would be, but it would have to obviously conform with your zoning, and it would be listed commercially.
Okay, thank you.
And that does mean somebody could buy it and still live there.
Right. Yeah.
Residential.
Just
It
be
would just
taxed
they would
commercial.
have, they would have the.
Yeah, they pay
the
40%
ability-
instead of 25%. Generally, you don't want to turn something commercial.
Any other questions? Comments? Once again, any motion would be either to recommend to the county commission for approval or disapproval. We have a motion to recommend for rezoning and a second. Any questions, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Once again, motion carries with one nay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Before we jump into hearings, you had a couple of items that were on your desk tonight. I'd like a motion to add plat of Pat Williams, property off of North River Road. We'll add that to the final item in the hearings section. And also, we have a miscellaneous item, the proposed extension of Nelson Lane entrance of American Garage Storage by Mike Gaddis. Can I have a motion to add those items? We'll add that to the miscellaneous items. We have a motion and a second to add these items to the agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign, motion carries. John, I guess you're on the hook tonight for Duck. Sundown Campground.
Down campground. This is a variance request to divide a new lot 220. Notice in your packet there was a typo that says lot 20, but it's supposed to be lot 220 in Sundown Campground. This is a situation where there was actually a structure on this portion of common area. The common area, it was kind of not too well defined. I think the maintenance person lived in this for a period of time. It's a pad that's already developed there, and they want to divide that off and add it to then the lot structure and the lot numbers of the existing campground. It's in character with the design of the campground itself. Determined that the Property Owners Association can dispose of that, and they've had a vote. I think the Property Owners Association had a vote and voted to release this portion of the common area for a lot. So this comes in for consideration of a variance request for lot size and a certification of sewer service on final plat signed by an authorized official, which would be the Property Owners Association, I believe, because they run the sewer system down there. Corrections to the plat, including a site map, owner's information, and clarification of abandonment of right-of-way, and add note on plat and setbacks as per zoning, and a signature of plat and a $20 platting fee. So this is basically a variance situation. It'll be handled administratively after that. So variance of lot size.
Questions, comments, discussion?
And all the other lots in there are similar size?
Yes. Okay. I want to confirm that Roger says that the Board of Zoning Appeals has already granted the variance for zoning on lot size. So we are granting the variance for subdivision regulation, minimum lot size. Just wanted to clarify that.
Commissioner McClellan.
What are the setback requirements on something like this?
In platted campground subdivisions, we've got a few of them in the county. It's 5 feet from side and rear, 15 feet from the edge of pavement or the property line, whichever of those two gives you the greatest distance. As long as there's, I'm pretty sure it's a 10 by 20 parking area. in front.
Any other comments? Questions?
Recommend to approve the variance.
Okay, we're recommending approval of variance to the subdivision regulations for lot lot size. I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second? I have a second. Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
J. Pat Williams property.
Yeah, I lost my agenda.
The two that were added.
This, yes.
Okay.
The added plat of J. Pat Williams property off of North River Road.
Okay. This again is coming as a variance request. After that, we can handle it administratively. The property is a little bit more than 5 acres. The owner wishes to divide it into 2. The house portion is already on the river and in the floodplain, and the division will be a status quo for that property, that portion of the property. Tract number 2 would actually be conforming by having an area, a buildable area outside the floodplain of greater than 7,500 square feet, and we estimated it at about 10,000 square feet, maybe a little bit more. So basically they're asking for a variance of tract 1 for the requirement that there be a buildable area outside the floodplain. And once we get that, or if we do get that, we will put this survey into plat format. We've already given instructions to the surveyor. The asphalt road is actually a public road, and the little Y turnaround is sufficient as it exists at the portions of the gate going into the property.
Questions or comments? Commissioner McClellan.
John, explain again about the access right-of-way into this property and through the property.
Well, the road, known as River Road and Old Mill Road or whatever, actually ends at the gates. There's a gate going up on the gravel road, and then there's a gate going towards the house. So the public right-of-way ends at those gates. And that'll be a dedication of a 50-foot right-of-way to that point.
So the deed right now includes the right-of-way, but you're going to dedicate 50 feet or something?
Well, it's maintained as a county road on that asphalt road, and it requires a dedication of 50 feet.
But he's showing it as part of the property, not as a right-of-way.
Well, that was because this survey needs to be put into plat format. He just did a survey of the existing situation. Once it comes through in plat format, it will require a 50-foot dedication of right-of-way.
All right, John, is it, by that statement, you implying there's going to be a second action by us?
No, once you grant the variance, it's just a 2-lot plat, and we can do that administratively from that point on.
All right. Questions, further questions, comments? We have a motion to grant the variance and a second. We have a motion with a second on the floor. Any further discussion? The motion is to approve plat variance, and that is for an existing structure on tract 1 that sits within the flood zone, creating a tract 2 with a buildable area outside the 100-year flood zone. Did I properly state that?
Yes.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. And administratively, you'll make sure the plat gets into proper order. All right, miscellaneous items. Excuse me, yes.
Proposed extension of Nelson Lane.
Those were all miscellaneous items.
Not really.
Proposed extension of Nelson Lane.
Okay. This one comes as a project in process. If you go down 321 towards Friendsville, you'll notice it on the left-hand side. There's a lot of grading there. There's going to be some storage buildings. It was approved with an entrance onto Lamar Alexander Parkway 321 at a point that was very near to the terminus of Nelson Lane. The owner and the proponent of this project has talked with the highway department, and they've determined that it would be in their best interest and the county's best interest to dedicate the entrance there and extend Nelson Lane as an alternate access out to Lamar Alexander Parkway. Part of that would be improvement of the existing road bed of Nelson Lane. And for that, I'd like to ask Jeff Hatcher if he would to come up and explain the agreements that have been made between the owner and the highway department on that.
The owners have had a conversation with Mr. Dunlap, and what they've agreed to do is widen Nelson Lane out to 18 foot, meeting our standards, which it does, you know, it's an old, one of our little old roads that wasn't very good to begin with, so they will be upgrading that at their expense. And of course, if you notice, this entrance they're showing that will connect to Nelson Lane will be brought up to state specs because it's within their right-of-way. So it's a win-win for us. We get a better pavement out of it and negligible amount of maintenance in the future.
And it does provide an improved access for the business. The site plan approved an entrance onto Highway 321 that was into a median, so there would only be a right out. Going down Nelson Lane goes to the other intersection that is there at Pellissippi and provides a right and a left access out of the property. So it provides a lot of benefits to both the business and the county.
Any questions or comments? Commissioner French?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeff, are we going to be is the county going to be responsible for the maintenance of that once it's improved?
Well, yes, that's the intention. Yeah, existing Nelson Lane, I understand that. It's already ours.
Right, I understand
And
that.
so that little segment right there, and actually, there's some question as to exactly where the footage comes on Nelson Lane right there. So it's almost insignificant, the amount that we're picking up that we don't already maintain. And if you've ever been down there, Nelson Lane is, you know, it's an old coal mix road.
Okay.
So they're getting ready to do something that is beneficial to the county by fixing that up.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Just for the county commissioners, you will see this as an addition to the road list as an extension of Nelson Lane.
Yeah, whenever you get the road list in January, I will show a modification to the footage.
Commissioner Allen?
So looking at this road, where the 3 lanes of Pellissippi come in or out, whatever you want to call their driveway, are they starting to pave from there all the way to the storage facility?
Okay, what it is it don't show on this drawing, but over to the right is your existing entrance into Pellissippi State.
Right.
And you come up, and Nelson Lane, that is actually Nelson Lane, and it turns, and there's no road bed that comes out through there.
To the left?
To the left, in front of what used to be the Carden property.
Are they going to start paving there and then go all the way to the storage facility?
Well, what what they're going to be giving to us is starting at the existing Pellissippi entrance, coming back towards this entrance to the storage facility. And then what you see here, the section between Nelson Lane here out to 321 is what we're talking about for our purposes, highway department's purposes.
Okay.
Commissioner Hedrick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This, Jeff is exactly right. It is a win-win. It's helping the developer. It's helping the county. This road has been an eyesore, and I'm very familiar with this project and what they're doing. It's good.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Not, a motion is in order. We have a motion to approve and a second. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you, John. And that brings us to long range.
Okay. Quite a few on the long-range items. One is continued discussion on commercial zoning alternatives along two-lane arterial roads in the county. I did send out a poll for all the commissioners. I've got 11 back. One came back too late for me to count it in the report here, but it didn't change the results in any way. I've given you the results by number, and I also gave you a summary at the very end on page 5, showing those that received at least 5 or more votes. And that list can be used as a basis for defining a list of uses in a new zone or defining a list of uses as special exception. I think the preponderance of the thought is that you want a mix of both of those. Special exception versus a new zone seems to be a desire to have a mix, and the location criteria didn't come out as quite as definitive, but it seems that the first two options on strategy of location, that is, limit location to new commercial along two-lane arterial roads at intersections with collector status roads only, and limit location of new commercial along two-lane arterial roads at intersections of any other roads, at least identifies a preference for defining zoning at intersections only. So with that, I think this is a continuing discussion. You've got kind of an idea of the preference on uses, and you've got an idea of the preference on wanting to have a new zone and possibly special exception. I'm not sure how that splits out, so I do need some discussion on that, or any other alternatives that you might want to suggest. I need some guidance on which way to go for the next meeting, basically.
John, the location criteria, you said no location criteria received 5 or more votes. Mm-hmm. What were you trying to recalibrate my mind here a minute? By location criteria, were you trying to get at the intersection question?
Yes, I gave several alternatives, and it seems that the location criteria at intersections seem to have the most resonance among the most people, but it wasn't that definitive. That's something that we really need to discuss a little bit more.
Do we have any questions or comments from the body? Mr. French.
I'll try to get something going, just from my personal feeling. Is there a way we can create a new zone, and in that new zone, instead of defining specific or special exceptions, take the special exceptions on an individual basis as they're presented to us? I mean, well, to me, it's hard to it's going to be hard to put special exceptions out there, because we're going to come up against some things that we probably hadn't thought of. And to me personally, I'd rather take them on an individual basis. By creating a new zone and take the special exception on an individual basis. That's my personal preference. Now, that's open for discussion.
Let me make sure we're talking about the same animal when we talk about special exception. If you set up a new zone, we've set up our other zones to have uses permitted, which it comes just as a, it's like a use of right. You have a right to that use, but you got to bring in a site plan and meet the other design criteria. The other is a special exception, which means the Board of Zoning Appeals would have the authority of review, and they could set some further conditions. We also have special exceptions with specific limitations, which means prior to the Board of Zoning Appeals getting it, we've set some of those limitations and some of those criteria that might be considered by the Board of Zoning Appeals. So it's a little bit more restricted. You're always going to be looking at a special exception on a case-by-case basis. It won't be the Planning Commission, it will be the Board of Zoning Appeals, but you've got to give them guidance. You can't just say, well, we will consider it at our whim when it comes up. That's called arbitrary and capricious. You've got to have some sort of a standard that can be applied across the board to those types of uses that are of similar type, but you can set those criteria strictly or you can set those criteria loosely. So you will consider them case-by-case basis. Even as a use permitted, it'll have to come to the Planning Commission for site plan approval. So I'm not sure we're talking about the same thing when you talk about on a case-by-case basis. Setting up the structure is what we're talking about now. It can be either a new zone, or it can be special exception within the R1 zone, or it could be a new zone with some permitted uses and some special exception uses. So those are kind of the three alternatives. I think we've been discussing it. I'm trying to get the feel of the Planning Commission. There's some new members here, so I'm not sure about the thinking of the new members, but it seemed to me that the Planning Commission was kind of leaning towards a new zone before the elections and before the new members came on. So that's kind of the way I've been thinking about it up to this point, but it's open right now because we don't have a new zone. We don't have special exceptions in the R1 zone that would fit this. So it's kind of a blank slate.
John, define for the new members, two-lane arterial.
Two-lane arterial is not 411 south. That's a 4 or 5 lane cross section. It's not the Lamar Alexander Parkway, which is a 4-lane or 5-lane cross section. We're talking about 2-lane cross sections like 411 north, and let's just look at that as an example because everybody's familiar with that. It's a lot less of an infrastructure, a lot less traffic, but it's still arterial. It functions as a higher level type of a road, and so we are explicitly limiting our discussions now to 2-lane arterial. That would be outside the urban growth boundary. Inside the urban growth boundary like we've had tonight, you can consider the regular C commercial zone for rezoning even onto major collectors.
Say that again.
We considered a rezoning tonight on a collector status road.
Right.
That is consistent with that zone, that C commercial zone inside the urban growth boundary. But we do consider a difference here. Once you get outside that urban growth boundary, you're into a rural area, and I think the thinking, at least up to this point, is you want to limit it to the arterial roads, not go onto the minor collector roads, because those outside the urban growth boundary are low volume, and sometimes they're not very wide. And so you want to limit that. So we're talking about just the arterial roads outside the urban growth boundary in the rural area of the county.
Okay. Commissioner Allen?
So John, if I'm hearing you correctly, there's no difference in the infrastructure of these roads. It's just whether it's in or outside of the urban growth boundary.
There is, as far as the RAC zone defines a big difference in the roads, and that's a 4-lane cross section as opposed to 2-lane. So what we're trying to do here is to consider opening up a greater portion of the county to commercial development, and that greater portion of the county would then be defined as a two-lane cross-section. If you were coming out of Maryville on 411 North and you hit the urban growth boundary, you could have the general commercial zone already within the urban growth boundary, but you would switch over at the present time to no commercial development basically beyond that point. So we're talking about putting some commercial development standards in for that situation coming outside the urban growth boundary. Hope did I answer your questions on that?
Yeah.
The infrastructure looks very similar.
Right. The actual road itself is the same width.
Well, you actually usually have a little bit better roads within the urban growth boundary than outside, but it can be the same. It depends on how it recently has been improved.
Who sets the boundaries for the urban growth boundary?
That was set by the 1101 growth law, and the process we went through back in 1998 to 99 and 2000. It was the municipalities and the county getting together and agreeing, and I put those in quotes, agreeing to these boundaries, because we did go to arbitration and to court over some of those boundaries, but we eventually, quote, agreed to all the boundaries, and they are set. It's a process that was mandated by state law.
John, that was a 20-year, wasn't that a 20-year urban growth boundary at the time? Is that correct?
Well, that was the nominal out year, and
which will be
the law has
4 years from now will be the 20th year, right?
Yeah, that was the nominal, and I'm not going to get into the weeds on this one, other than each of the parties were capable of bringing it up after 3 years, bringing it up again for reconsideration, but I think nobody really wanted to touch it because it was a rather divisive process at the time.
Yeah, and just kind of back to we're talking about intersections, not an area. Is that correct?
We haven't determined that yet.
But that's possible if we want to make it restricted to an intersection.
Mm-hmm.
And we, just as a reminder, we have not created another zone in quite some time, have we?
No, the last new zone we created was the rural arterial commercial zone.
Correct.
For the 4-lane cross-section.
Kind of as FYI, we have, whether it's right or wrong,
I'm sorry,
we haven't
that was
created another zone. That's not neither here nor there, but yeah, back to this urban growth boundary, it was for 20-year plan is what originally, and I've always kind of had an issue with that because we're approaching the last 4 years and we're not anywhere near.
I'm hoping I'm retired before it comes up again.
I personally, I'll make my last comment. I personally think that if we want to try to restrict it or identify intersections, I think might be a better approach for this as we continue on out in the county. That's just my personal opinion.
John, the 4-lane, the 4-lane arterial exception to this, how exactly, I can't find it. How does that read?
Well, in the first paragraph of the RAC zone, it says it applies only to 4-lane cross-section. In fact, it specifies the roads that it applies to. So if it comes before the Planning Commission or the County Commission for approval of a rezoning, it has to meet that minimum criteria, that threshold criteria. So we could not apply that to a 2-lane cross-section.
But we could amend that to say 2-lane intersection and or 4-lane road.
2-lane intersection?
An intersection of a 2-lane arterial road, like Tom was saying.
You could, but you're talking about a different animal there. I mean, as far as traffic and level of infrastructure and generality of the description of uses. The RAC zone is set up for general description of uses, and I think we were talking a little bit more about a kind of a neighborhood type of zone. Once you get into a neighborhood type of zone and not just a general commercial zone, you specify those uses. Now, as those uses might need to change over time, if somebody comes in with something that is not listed and everybody thinks that, well, that's okay, then you amend your regulations. that adds some time to the development process, but it also keeps the gate a little more tightly closed than on a general commercial zone.
But now, those uses, are they not under special exception, or they're just general uses, anybody can use?
Let's just, for the sake of argument, say that the uses that receive more than 5 or more votes were the list that you're going to work from, and you're going to set up a new zone, and all those uses were going to be uses permitted. You might not even have special exceptions in that new zone. You might just have uses permitted, and that list is what limits you as to what you can consider.
The advantage of having the special exceptions is the BZA can put some limitations and some buffers or whatnot on these. So if we did set up a new zone, could we use the uses that are listed, and then allow the BZA to approve those uses as special exceptions only?
Well, you would have an odd situation where you have no uses permitted, and then you just have special exceptions. I would suggest that you need to sift through this list again and say that something like a barber shop or a beauty shop doesn't really need a special exception process, that could be a use permitted, but something like a child daycare center, which might have a little bit more impact on the neighborhood, might be a special exception. So you can have a mix there. It would just be odd to have no uses permitted, but everything special exception. If you're going to have a commercial zone, there's got to be something that fits that zone perfectly.
Commissioner French?
John, I guess my question on to be considered on what we're looking at, this new zone. If we were to allow these at the intersections, I'm assuming we'd have to set a standard to where that particular use would have to front the arterial road and not the minor collector road. If you understand what I'm trying to say.
I understand what you're saying.
Now, there might be a side entrance off the minor collector road. What I don't want to see is going down that minor collector road with another one and another use and another use. Well, what I'm looking at is just keeping it on the 2-lane arterial road.
Yeah.
Can we do that?
Yes, in fact, we've done it just recently for campgrounds. The campgrounds do allow access and development within, 500 feet or 250 feet of the intersection of a collector status road and the road that defines where that use can be. What that does is give you a little more flexibility. If you've already got an entrance to a road, you don't want to necessarily force another driveway onto that arterial road. It might be better just to bring it in on the minor road and have the access there, or have it both so that there'll be circulation within the property.
That's what I was thinking, maybe have them both, but just on the corner on the minor road.
Yeah.
Is what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, in the RAC zone, we limit the rezoning to no more than 500 feet back off the 4-lane or 5-lane highway. So yes, you can do that.
Commissioner Rowdy?
If we agree at the intersections and we come up with a list of 20 acceptable businesses, and someone wants another one that's not on that list, they would not come to us, they would go to the BZA.
No, if it's not on the list, what they would have to do is to come to, usually it starts in the Planning Commission. They could go actually to the County Commission, but it'd have to come back here for recommendation. They'd usually start it at Roger's office, come to the Planning Commission. You would consider that new use, and it would take an amendment of the zoning text to add that use to the list. And then they would go through the process of approval of the site plan. So it'd be a 2-step process. First, amend the regulations, and then come in for the approval of the
So the BZA wouldn't be involved in anything?
Well, the BZA would be involved if it is defined as a special exception. That's their only role.
Okay.
So anything that is not within the special exception has to go through the full process.
Right.
If you're talking about a use variance, and I'll use the term loosely, is illegal. Some Board of Zoning Appeals try to do that, but they can be caught in lawsuits, and it's just not a good, I mean, Roger will advise them, no, you can't do it, and hopefully they wouldn't do that.
Commissioner French?
Jerry, I appreciate you bringing that up, because that's what really I had in mind when we were talking about the new zone. Is I would like for it to come to the Planning Commission first, just like you said. And in that case, I think you've answered the question of how I would approach it, what I feel like I'd approach it. Now, I've got another question. John, for the purpose of some of the new members, under the commercial use along two-lane arterial roads that you handed out, I think is last meeting. Define low to moderate density.
There is no set definition to that. In past zoning considerations, as far as setting up the zoning for the county, 4,000 square feet was the special exception limitation in a lot of the instances, 4,000 square feet in the rural area. We found that well, let's just use Dollar General as an example, because that's on everybody's mind. Dollar General usually doesn't build a store that's less than about 10,000 square feet. They have some that are a little bit less, but not substantially less. So I would say that you might need to consider, if Dollar General footprint meets your consideration of low to moderate density or intensity, that you set that at a reasonable standard so that the business might thrive. And I'm offering to you 10,000 square feet. That's not written in stone. That's just something that we've kind of developed in my office in considering other uses in other jurisdictions. We've had experience with 2 Dollar General stores, one in Rockford and one in Louisville. And if those 2 types of stores would fit your ideal of what should be out in the rural area, then I think you need to raise that to 10,000 square feet. That would define the moderate intensity. The less than that, the low density or low intensity might be 4,000 square feet still. It might be 2,000 square feet. It might be just a house that's converted, a small house that's converted to a barber shop or a beauty shop. So you set the upper limit, and everything else will take care of it after that. I think if you do change the 10,000 square feet for a new zone in the rural area, you probably need to look at the RAC zone, which is on a higher level infrastructure, and maybe get that up to 20,000 square feet.
It's 17 now, is it not?
Well, there's some internal inconsistencies in there, and I think we need to probably resolve those in passing. That's just my recommendation to you. I mean, you can focus purely on a new zone in the rural area and just disregard that if you want.
Commissioner McClellan?
411 North concerns me more than anything because of the volume of traffic, and we have no control over infrastructure requirements, I don't think, as far as traffic, and putting anything on commercial on 411 North to me is a real traffic nightmare without extra lanes required, and you can't get the right of way to do that just for one particular project necessarily. Traffic concerns me.
I would suggest when you drive down 411, you look at the existing commercial uses and ask yourself whether an extra lane would substantially improve the situation. You've got a lot of 2-lane situations where you're adding quite a bit of commercial use. There's a lot of 2-lane situations, quite heavy, even in my neighborhood down Montville Station Road. There's convenience stores, and there's a lot of development already in the county on 2-lane roads that don't require an extra lane to allow that to take place.
All right, gentlemen, we're not going to resolve this tonight. John needs direction, and I'm wondering, John, whether a workshop is in order to maybe open up discussion more? Or what direction do we need to give you?
Well, I have to disclose that I'm going to have an operation that's going to put me out of commission for at least 2 weeks. Marlene's looking at me like it might be more than that. I'm going to have a hip replaced. And it's going to take a while for me to get back. I'm not going to be able to handle that before the next meeting. I might be able to handle getting an example to you if you can give me enough direction on which way you want to go. I can give you an example of what a new ordinance might look like. So that's kind of what I'm looking for now.
Commissioner Allen?
I've never made a motion before, and I don't know if this is the time or not, so sorry, but I would like to make a motion that John create in his mind, a new zone at the intersection of all arterial roads to allow the uses that you had on your packet that received 5 or more votes, and then bring that to us, and then we have something to build on.
Okay.
Go ahead, Commissioner Fraser.
I don't think we need a motion for that, do we, John?
No, I just need a kind of a
Yeah.
nodding.
We need consensus.
Yeah, I think,
I'd like to go down the road with no special exceptions, so that if we've got 20 items on there, that if someone has a 21st, they've got to come to us and not go to the BZA. So I want to change my vote. I want to be in the strategy of a new zone with no special exception.
and I agree with that, Jerry. And I also got another suggestion that you touched on, Ed, and that was a workshop. And what I'm going to suggest, I think it would behoove all of us, is maybe we could do a traveling workshop and maybe get everybody together and let's drive these 2-lane arterial roads and see what we're looking at. I think it'd make a lot more sense if we can see what we're looking at to be able to decide what we think's the best for the county. Now, I know some of you live north, and I travel 411 South every day. But how many of you have been down 411 South in the last little while to see what's there, or 411 North? I've not been down 411 North in quite a while. But I would like to see some of the areas we're talking about, some of the cross sections that we're trying to make a decision on. So I'm going to suggest, John, it'll have to, and we're not on a time constraint.
No, we're not.
At all.
No, we are not on a...
So we can do this after your 2-week surgery. We can still discuss it and still talk about what we want. But then let's take a traveling workshop and let us see what we're trying to make a decision on.
Well,
That's just a suggestion.
yeah. If you have a workshop, we've got to publish it, and we've got to let the public participate. Well, basically, yeah. I mean, we can set it up, and I will have something for you by the next meeting for you to consider. I would suggest that you just take some time off and travel, maybe get somebody to drive for you so you can actually look at it a lot better, because I've noticed that when my wife drives, I see a heck of a lot more than when I drive because I'm focused on the road. Get somebody else maybe to drive you and just take a look at these roads and the businesses that are already along them and how they've been developed. And take time to go by the Dollar General in Rockford and the Dollar General in Louisville. Both of those are on 2-lane cross sections. In fact, the Dollar General on Topside is along a 2-lane cross section that has quite a bit of shoulder, and it's kind of a higher level type of a use. And just look at those uses and see, what else fits into that situation. That's basically, when you come back, you'll have kind of something in your mind that's visual then.
All right. The way we leave it right now is, John, you're going to draw up perhaps a model for us to look at. Keep in mind what John has just said. Travel a county and perhaps go look at some of these new Dollar General sites, and that will be completion of our discussion on 2-lane arterial tonight. John?
Okay. The next is...
Can I add one thing to that, John? Can you, for the sake of the newer commissioners, explain what two-lane arterials we're talking about so they'll know which roads they might want to go visit?
That is in a memo that was dated November 18th, and I can go through those. Let me see if I can find it in here. 5 roads qualify as two-lane minor arterials: Highway 411 North, Highway 129 Calderwood Highway, Highway 72, which is a small segment in the southwest of the county line with Monroe County, Highway 321 from intersection with Foothills Parkway to Townsend city limits, and Highway 321 Wares Valley Road from Townsend city limits to county line with Sevier County.
Page 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I need to leave, and I certainly want to thank you all, and I ask you all to please pray for us.
Okay.
I appreciate all of you.
Thank you, Geneva. Our thoughts and prayers are with you. John?
Okay. Next is discussion on design guidelines for commercial uses. When you go around looking at Dollar General, look at the different designs. We based our design guidelines on Maryville. And if you go down 321 towards Friendsville, on the left, you'll see a new Dollar General. That's basically what you get when you use our design guidelines. I mean, you can use that as a template. Somebody mentioned the one in Louisville. Louisville has quite a bit more of requirements for design, and they got a fully bricked-in building. And they were very strict up there for as far as site plan review and the design guidelines. So we had a Ed McMahon video. Some of the members, particularly new members, saw that, and some of the older members had already been to another one that was very similar. I don't know where to start on this other than to say that we do have quite a bit of requirements for design. We have a very strong lighting standards section. Some other jurisdictions are using that as a model. So I'll have to just kind of open it up to some guidance on where you want to go with this.
John, I haven't been out and looked at the new Louisville Dollar General. The one out here on 321, though, is bricked in the city of Maryville.
Partially bricked.
I thought it was bricked all the way around.
No, it's partly metal.
Because our design standards currently just call for a facade on the front, right, Roger?
50% non-metallic.
On the front, but it doesn't require anything on the sides.
Well, any side that's front of a road, like if it's at a corner or something like that.
Louisville requires at least all visible from the road.
They don't allow metal buildings, period, although one kind of snuck in on them.
How do you say no metal buildings?
Well, you put it in your regulations, and you say when you bring in a site plan, show us no metal on the exterior.
Well, I mean, you can put a facade.
Yes, it would be a facade.
You can put a facade on anything.
Yes.
But they say no exposed metal.
No exposed metal, that's correct.
I guess two things that really came to my mind is I had asked John to put design guidelines for commercial uses on the agenda because I knew we were headed down the road of the two-lane arterial, and I think it's important before we add more commercial zones that we take a hard look at what we want designs out further outside the city limits to look like. And I'm concerned about lighting, and I guess, John, the Dollar General in Rockford,
there was no
lights up the whole, I mean, it is, I guess I would like assurance that we won't have a reoccurrence of that type of lighting if the Dollar General goes in down on Montvale. But I believe our standards are much tighter than they are in Rockford. I don't know whether
I don't think they had any lighting standards in Rockford.
Because we don't allow we allow a very limited spillage on adjoining property. You can't light up someplace like they do in Rockford. So to me, lighting was very important. I mean, we don't need to create ballpark lighting out in the rural sections because it just ruins the neighborhood.
And I think the outside of the buildings also need to blend in with the countryside instead of
Well,
just
and
kind of
that was my
glaring out
other
there.
concern.
Yeah.
And, a brick face on a metal building, to me, doesn't cut that. I mean, particularly if it's all exposed, and it becomes essentially ugly. So that, I guess I was just asking that we take a hard look at what we really want if we're going to allow commercial outside the urban growth boundaries. Commissioner Caldwell.
John, the Louisville location, the offsets that are on the side of the building, is that part of the design requirements, or was that something structural, on the?
Well, they had to break it every X number of feet, and I can't remember what I wasn't involved in that portion of it. They actually have a design review committee that did that portion, and I just kind of followed it as it went through, but I didn't have a hand in that. Ours also has a requirement of breaking the facade every 30 feet?
Every 30 feet, it has to have a 3 feet break.
Offset or something like that.
So I guess one of the things I would like to see where we have something to protect the sides of the building or to where you're going to have exposure to a byway, that the facade needs to be something more than just covering the front, because that, in my estimation, doesn't.
I tell you what, I can forward to you the Louisville design guidelines if you'd like, so you can see what they had and then what they got. And that's the only example I know of right now, because Maryville's and ours is very close, because we based ours on Maryville. And I think the one on top side is actually in Alcoa, so Alcoa doesn't have that kind of facade requirement necessarily.
Okay. I think that'd be a good thing to do.
Okay.
Go ahead and provide us with what Louisville has.
Okay. So that'll be
All
next
right,
meeting.
this is a work in progress, but I think I would like for you all to think about it. What do you want? And if you haven't seen the Ed McMahon tape, take advantage of using that tape to gain some training time. It's an excellent communication.
How long is the tape?
It's about an hour.
That's exactly what I need.
Well, come by my office and I'll set you up and we'll get you taken care of.
I'll be by.
All right, proposed amendment to the subdivision regulations setting 10-foot minimum building setback along common driveway easements. This came out of a discussion we had last month in one of the plats. John has got a draft of the amendment to the subdivision regulations. John, do you want to address that?
Yeah, it's on the second page. The first page is kind of preamble and a little lead into that. That is based on our discussion at the last meeting, and when I read through it, I felt that it probably needed to make a distinction between public road and private roads. So on private roads, the setback is 30 feet. On common driveway, we kind of settled on the 10-foot setback. The rest of that remains the same as far as principal arterial, major arterial, and other public roads. So that's the proposed amendment from staff. If you feel that that is appropriate, then you need to set a public hearing, and the December meeting is the one that's available, because it does take 30 days notice and we can't hit the November meeting.
Any questions or comment on this? Do I have a motion to set public hearing on the amendment for the December, prior to the December scheduled meeting? So moved. Second. Second. Discussion. Commissioner McClaw.
I was going to propose deny the amendment, but go ahead.
Well, no, we can discuss it.
I just don't think it ought to be that small. 20 maybe, but not down to 10.
I think we kind of went through that last meeting. Okay. Okay. We'll, Commissioner Caldwell.
After thinking about this after the last meeting, I tend to agree with Bruce after I processed it, but, you know, I guess we'll handle that in a vote on the amendment.
Well, the amendment's either going to be approved as, go for public hearing at 10, or we need to amend it before we send it to public hearing. I mean, I can take a vote if we want to vote it down.
Are you, just to clarify, are you recommending, are you talking about
The common driveway easement, I believe that's what you're talking about, Bruce, right? It was not clear what it was, that basically there was no setback, is I think was basically what we came up with, that there was no defined setback on a common driveway easement line.
You tell me. I mean, I think it came out of the last meeting at about 10, and most people were shaking their heads, yes, but except for Bruce. Now we've got one that's saying that maybe it needs to be more. Right now, it's nothing. It's zero. Because it is just a driveway. It's not a public road.
I just have a question for Bruce and David. What is the reasoning behind your, pushing for 20? Just for my information.
I'll turn your mic on.
Would you want a house sitting 10 feet off the road you drove by every day? I mean, I know there's only 4 houses on that particular road, but I just don't think it should be that close to the road.
Commissioner French, if you remember that last application we had on that driveway, there was no setback for the structure. So after studying that, after Bruce brought that to our attention, it just, I feel the same way he does. When you're driving, if you're driving past that lot and that house is 10 feet off that road, that's not right. I don't believe that's what we're looking to try to accomplish, even though it's on a common driveway or an easement or a right of way.
Commissioner Hedrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Commissioner McClellan. I think it's twofold. First of all, I don't think it's safe being that close. Secondly, I don't think the appearance is good either, sitting right on top of the road. So, 20 maybe, but I think 10's really pushing it. Thank you.
Could I kind of explain something? It's not going to be right 10 feet off the edge of the road. It's going to be 10 feet off the easement. The 10-foot gravel drive will be inside a 25-foot easement. So you're going to have about, 7 feet or so, 6 feet, 7 feet before you get to the easement line, then 10 more feet. So it's going to be about 15 or more feet off the gravel drive itself. Let's just keep that in mind. We're not talking about 10 feet off the edge of the gravel.
And that's part of my concern is, would that preclude, on some lots, would that preclude someone from building? Could it possibly prevent them from building on a lot if it were 20 feet? I guess that's my...
Well, you're talking about new lots that are coming in for your approval on a plat. Any old lots, Roger can go by any old plats and any setbacks that are shown on those old plats. Or if those plats had no setbacks at all, then he goes by what the zoning has, and the zoning on common driveways is not defined. Correct. So 0. So it's not going to hurt any existing lots. It'll be any new lots that are created through this body.
Commissioner Hedrick? No. Commissioner Caldwell?
But we're not guaranteed that gravel road will be in the center of that 25-foot easement either, are we?
No, you're not.
Right.
No. But you usually put it in the center, and you usually have utilities on one side or the other. Usually. I can't guarantee you one way or the other, though.
All right, I'm going to take Commissioner Allen. I'm going to take a vote. If it goes down, we'll discuss and revise. I have a motion and a second to approve the proposed amendment for public hearing in our scheduled meeting in December. All those in favor signify by, you still want to say something before we vote? No, there is no amendment in place. It's as written. All those in favor as written signify by saying aye. Opposed? Do I have a proposed amendment?
Did that
Motion
fail?
fails.
Okay.
20 feet.
All right. Do I have a motion to amend the proposed amendment from 10 foot to 20 foot? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of recommending the proposed amendment go to public hearing in December. The amendment is the common driveway easement line shall have a 20-foot setback from the easement. All those in favor signify, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just want to make sure that I'm thinking the right way. If you've got a piece of property and you got a common driveway for other people running through it, say you've got a 25-foot right of way, then you're going to have 20 feet on each side of that you cannot build on. Mm-hmm. So now that's 65 feet stretch down your property that you can't build on. That's what we're voting on.
That's it.
All those in favor of the proposed amendment at 20-foot setback from the easement signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. No. Roll call.
Andy Allen. No. Brad Bowers. No. David Caldwell.
Yes.
Sean Carter.
Yes.
Ron French.
Yes.
Jeff Hedrick.
Yes.
Tom Hodge.
Yes.
Bruce McClellan.
Yes.
Jerry Roddy.
Yes.
Clifford Walker.
Yes.
Ed Stuckey.
Yes. The yeas have it. Motion, John, modify the amendment for public hearing in December. Discussion of possible additional amendment to the newly adopted campground and RV parks and zoning regulations. John.
Okay. As I reported at the last meeting, those standards were approved by the County Commission, but in the discussion, there were a lot of points that were raised about the weaknesses and possible concerns with the wording, and I think the tacit agreement among most of the members that voted for it was that it should be tweaked at a date certain, and so I'm bringing this forward to you. My intent is to have some specific wording for amendment before you at the next meeting. And what I've done is to take all the comments that I can remember and that I've gotten notes on from several meetings and put them in a list. And I'm asking you, is this a list that you want to go by? And do you want to add to it? Do you want to take anything off the board for consideration?
All right. Let me ask a question of the commission members. Have you had a chance, or did you take the time to read this list? And if you do you want to make comment on it tonight, or do we want to, I know our meeting is getting long since we've been doing half-hour meetings and we've gone an hour and a half.
You've been spoiled.
Yeah. I don't want to burn the new members out in their first
The new members are still getting over their introductory materials. Not funny, is it? No.
Do we want to discuss this tonight, or do you want to take this list, go through it, and have it on the long-term next meeting? John, add this. We will carry this over to November meeting. Commissioner McClellan.
John, our November meeting, I assume, will be the Tuesday before Thanksgiving?
It'll be the Monday before. There's a conflict. We've got, I think it is the Friendsville Planning Commission. We've got contracts with them, and so to make the meetings jive, we have to have it on Monday. I think that'll occur in December also, won't it? Okay. But we'll get it out to you.
Well, but thank you for bringing it up, Commissioner McClellan, because Marlene had told me beforehand that I needed to mention it. So our next meeting is Thanksgiving week, but it will be the Monday night before Thanksgiving. Likewise, Christmas comes at a regular scheduled meeting. Likewise, Christmas will be on December 22nd, December Christmas week. December 22nd, I believe, is also a Monday, correct?
So the November meeting, just to give, you'll have a date, is the 24th.
Right.
Just for staff reports, if I could.
Go ahead.
Briefly. Most of the members are in good shape for education, and I'm sure we can get education done by the end of the year. Some of you that have been on the Planning Commission for more than a year need to consider the property rights requirement of the state statutes. There is a opportunity for that on the October 30th, and I'll just see Mr. French, okay, Mr. Hodge, and Mr. Walker. I did get the PowerPoint from Dan Hawk. I don't think I can go for 2 hours. Dan has a lot more knowledge about this than me, but I think I could hold forth at least for an hour, so I might be able to hit most of your requirements on that. If you will contact me after I get back from my surgery, we'll set you up to get an hour of that at my office or at your convenience, okay? And as far as those who need more hours than that, I will contact you directly. The new members don't have to worry about this because you are new members and it's a calendar year basis, but I'll contact you directly and we'll make arrangements to get that done before the end of the year.
Did you say that it was available October 30th somewhere?
Yes, it's in between Jefferson City and Newmarket, Tennessee, at Appalachian Electric Cooperative. And if you want the good version, go to that one because mine's going to be pretty meager. Yes, I think I can. I've looked through the Bruce has been to it. He understands that Dan can hold forth quite a bit, but Dan also picked on me for several questions, and so I can handle a few of the items, but I just can't handle the whole spectrum of it.
Gentlemen, thank you. We are adjourned.